We don't get to have a debate about artificial intelligence or how big the Navy should be or what the disposition of the United States towards the growing menace of totalitarianism should be. We have a simple debate between two men who the country overwhelmingly doesn't want to see run against one another, but nevertheless are profoundly different as two men could be, oppositional characters in a long story, in a chain. The question at hand is, will we, with the Constitution at our backs, stop those people who want to burn it, who want to rip it up? So a bloviating hustler from the Queens can become an American Caesar. No thanks. It is the 27th of June, 131 days to go until the last votes are cast in the 2024 American presidential election. This is the warning, and tonight is the great debate. Truly, it is historic. There has never been an instance in American history where two men, both presidents, have faced off against each other. What makes the moment more dramatic is that Joe Biden, the 46th president, defeated Donald Trump, raising the stakes even higher. When he was defeated, Donald Trump became the first president in American history to desecrate his oath, to refuse to accede to the will of the American people. Donald Trump instead incited a mob and then sent that mob marching on the Capitol of the United States, where finally, 158 years after Gettysburg, the rotunda was breached by the Confederate battle flag. When this debate begins tonight, understanding what it is and what it isn't is extremely important to be able to orient around what is happening. This tonight is not a genial conversation about differences in fiscal policy or national security affairs. This is an existential debate about the future of the country, which requires people to look past the manifest flaws of both men. There is something that is very seldom talked about on cable news or written about in the many Washington, D.C. based newsletters. All of them put politics forward in a frame where the country is evenly and hopelessly divided. There is broad agreement, though, on some things. Perhaps the most unifying political issue of our time, which is divided, is the fact that an overwhelming majority of Americans don't want the contest between President Biden and Donald Trump. They don't want it, but they're getting it. And that cynicism that results from that helps one of these candidates more than the other. Candidate that it helps is Donald Trump, who is boosted by cynicism in the same manner that Joe Biden would be boosted by idealism if he was able to find a way to summons it. But idealism is deeply connected to a vision of the future. And thus far in the presidential campaign, the debate exists only in the present and the past. Donald Trump stands for the proposition, you never had it better. And Joe Biden stands for the proposition, it's never been so good. James Carville talks about this all the time. It's the first campaign in his memory, which is longer than mine, where nobody talks about the future. But even that is beside the point. When the 45th and 46th president of the United States walk out onto the stage, there have been 700 million Americans ever since the beginning of the Republic. More than half of all Americans who have ever lived are alive right now. Think about that. Out of 700 million people, there are only 45 men, 44 white men, all Christians of some denomination or other, no Jews, and one black man, no women. 45 men have taken an oath that is written into the Constitution of the United States. The founders of the country must have considered that oath to be very important. They must have thought it through because it is the only oath in the Constitution. And every American president from George Washington through Joseph Robinette Biden of Delaware have taken it, all of them, 35 words long. And it ends with a promise to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. Each president, even presidents who steered the country into disaster, like Lyndon Johnson in Vietnam, like George W. Bush in the Middle East, were faithful to their oath. The oath does not mean inerrancy. It doesn't mean that you won't make mistakes. It doesn't mean that you won't cut corners. It doesn't mean that you won't have ethical breaches or tolerate people that do. Every single president has done their utmost to fulfill the oath, to apply their vision to the concrete words that are the only commitment a president swears to: preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States of America. It's all that matters. The perpetuity of the country, its longevity, its existence, its endurance is profoundly more important than any single person, especially a president of the United States, who should know this more than any other person. A president is part of a chain, and a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. Donald Trump is that weak link: a liar, a con man, a rapist, an ignorant, convicted felon, and bully. But all of those things do not necessarily disqualify him. What disqualifies him is what he did when he lost the election. He thought it was all right to tear up the oath, to burn it. It's much worse than burning the flag. That would have been a misdemeanor compared to what Trump did. He incited chaos and mayhem, and his mob tore down the American flag, and they raised up his fascist MAGA banner in its stead. The American flag was turned into a weapon to beat Black men who were defending the capital of the United States from the armed mob. They were abused by that mob. That mob abused all of us. They shit on the floor of the United States House of Representatives and in the United States Senate. They screamed the N-word over and over and over again as they rampaged, looking to kill the Vice President of the United States, who dared to fulfill his constitutional oath. That's what this debate is about tonight. It's not about policy. It's not about tax rates. It's not about spending, though all of these things are important. We don't get to have a debate about artificial intelligence or how big the Navy should be, or what the disposition of the United States towards the growing menace of totalitarianism should be. We have a simple debate between two men who the country overwhelmingly doesn't want to see run against one another, but nevertheless are profoundly different as two men could be. Oppositional characters in a long story, in a chain. Two links next to each other, permanently connected and intertwined for all time by events, by history that will endure long past their mortal lives. These two men, linked forever by a chain, will stand in a fairly empty, hermetically sealed room tonight. Most of the country will watch this debate. It will shatter records for CNN. People say the American people don't care about politics. They're tuned out. That will be refuted tonight. What they're tuned out to is the nonsense that plays out on so much of the cable news stations. They've turned it off. But for the main event about the country's future, they'll tune in. And when they do, no matter what flaws seem to manifest themselves, what trip-ups or stumbles or stutters, what moments of contradiction or just errancy, none of it matters. Only one thing does. Donald Trump was given the greatest honor the American people can bestow on a fellow citizen. He was made commander-in-chief. He was made head of state. He was inaugurated president of the United States of America. And when the American people, in their wisdom, said he was dismissed and discharged from those duties, when the American people turned the ship of state and chose the former Vice President Joe Biden to be the commander-in-chief, Donald Trump did something that no predecessor had done. He refused to bow, to submit to the will of the American people, because he lacks humility and character and decency. He tried to become a dictator in the United States And incredibly, he's brought along 30% of the country for the ride. But it's not enough. What he needs is apathy to join his coalition, and we must not let it happen. This oath breaker has disqualified himself, not through his rapes, not through his treacheries, not through his cons, not through his felonies, not through his contradictions, bullying, abuse, and lies, but because he shattered his oath. The only one that our founders thought important enough to put into the Constitution. The question at hand is, will we, with the Constitution at our backs, stop those people who want to burn it, who want to rip it up? So a bloviating hustler from the Queens can become an American Caesar. No thanks. Remember that when you're watching the debate tonight. This is The Warning. I'm Steve Schmidt. This is The Warning, and I invite you to subscribe on our Substack, on our YouTube channel. Follow us. Welcome to the community.